Are you ready to learn the difference between a part-time virtual assistant and a full-time virtual assistant, and maybe what would be the trigger to just hire one or the other? In this video, I'm going to differentiate what a part-time virtual assistant is and a full-time virtual assistant, the differences of both, and to be honest, why in 2XU we only really work with clients who are looking for full-time virtual assistants. Now, first is to define either one. Basically, a part-time virtual assistant is someone who works with you for about 10 to 20 hours a week versus a full-time executive assistant might be 30 hours to 40 hours in a week. So safe to assume that basically one is kind of working in your business versus one is really fully dedicated in your business. Now, depending on where you're at, maybe your business is fairly new. Maybe it's for now just a side gig for you. You haven't fully kind of taken the leap into doing this more full time. Then it might make sense for you to just have someone who's kind of in your business, but not really, versus later on as you start scaling and growing, it makes sense for you to have more of a full-time assistant in your team. Now, of course, when it comes to cost, a part-time virtual assistant is going to be a little bit of a lower cost, mostly because, of course, they're not working as many hours versus for more of a full-time assistant, it will cost a little bit more just because they're working more hours. However, a little caveat here is sometimes if you're working with more of a specialist virtual assistant, even when they're part-time, is they might cost you more because, of course, you're taking up a lot of their time and they've already learned and mastered this skill. Next is availability. Of course, when you have a part-time virtual assistant, it is only limited to the hours that you guys agreed on, versus if you had a full-time virtual assistant, if you do a little bit of overtime more than the 40 hours, you guys can negotiate and make that a little bit easier, versus for a part-time assistant, if your hours have to be longer, for example, you might be doing a launch, you might be doing something new in your business, it might be a little bit harder for your virtual assistant to switch from the limited hours basically that's given to a longer hours, because they might have other clients, and probably they do have other clients, which is another difference between a part-time assistant and a full-time assistant, because a part-time assistant will need to get clients to be able to, one, fill up their hours in a day, and the other one is, of course, to make do of the hours that they're not working to basically keep making money, versus for a full-time assistant, they're fully working in your hours. They might be on a flexible scape, or they might be fully while you are working, they're working as well, and it's easier for you to have their availability because they're only focused on working with you. And of course, when it comes to workload, naturally for part-time assistants, they're really on the specific tasks that need to get done in your business. Rather, for a full-time assistant, they could be in the more experimental tasks, they can be in more generic tasks. So as you're growing your business, you can have your assistant be doing a lot of research, a lot of background checks, a lot of testing, versus if for a part-time assistant, they might just be doing, like I said, very specific outcome and tasks to get done in the limited time that you guys are working. And of course, when it comes to onboarding and training, when you have a part-time assistant, most of the time they will take care of themselves, versus if you are investing in someone who's more full-time, more long-term, then there is a little bit of onboarding and training and getting them up to your business standards, versus for a part-time assistant, they might be the same standards as their other clients as well. And of course, when it comes to commitment and growth, a part-time assistant might not be fully just again working with you. They will have 2 or 3 other clients that they will need to fill up the rest of their time. So when it comes to more projects or growing them more, there might be just a little bit of resistance, versus for a full-time assistant that you might have, it's easier to add more responsibilities. It's easier to grow them into new roles and positions and projects later on as well. When it comes to scalability, a part-time assistant will be definitely easier when it comes to putting up the workload or lowering the workload, versus for a full-time assistant where it's just really the consistent 40 hours a week of working with you, or 30 hours a week, depending on what the agreement is. But the point is that as your business grows, again, it might be harder for you to add on more hours with your part-time assistant versus for your full-time assistant. Even though at the beginning, it might not feel like you have enough work for them, you can add training, you can add other things that they can fill in their time. So then as you grow the business and as they grow as well, then it's a little bit easier to kind of get them up to speed because they've already been working with you and your business and not worried about anyone else. And of course, when it comes to communication, part-time assistants will only respond at the certain time that you've set for them, versus for a full-time assistant, they have, of course, longer work hours. They can be a little bit more consistent when it comes to communications as well. And of course, the biggest one is when it comes to urgent tasks or quick pivots. For part-time assistants, again, it's only limited to their hours, versus for a full-time assistant, it's easier to just have them get things done right on the fly. So when do you think of hiring a part-time assistant versus a full-time assistant? As I've kind of gone through a little bit of the differences, for part-time assistant, it's really if your business isn't ramping up just yet, you've kind of just gotten started, you're starting to see a few more tasks here and there. Also, if you have a limited budget or you have more time-bound tasks that you need to get done in the business, and you have a little bit more of flexible hours and less commitment to what it is that needs to get done in the business, and you're just kind of wanting to see what it's like to work with an assistant versus going full-time, which is, again, in 2XU, we're only working with clients who need a full-time assistant. It is when you have a more consistent and significant amount of work for them to get done. You're looking to actually grow and scale your business. You've gotten to the point where you now have more regular tasks or consistent tasks or recurring tasks that need to get done in the business. And the biggest one is you're kind of ready to get to the part where you're not just running your business, you're actually growing it. You're doing more of the growth related tasks in your business rather than running just the admin or marketing tasks. And honestly, inside of 2XU, one of the biggest things that we always aim for is having the assistant become the second brain of the client. And that is honestly impossible to do if the EA is worried about the next client or thinking of the next project or thing that they have to work on with someone else. Rather than being able to focus working with you, they start having ideas in the shower, they start being more proactive or taking more innovative steps to do things faster and better, because again, they're just working with you. They're not worried about any other client or anyone else. And while working with a part-time assistant is a good way to see what it would be like, it is such a stark difference versus having someone full-time, basically dedicated and working with you in the business versus someone who might not be even there long-term later on. Now again, it does depend on the kind of business that you have and where you're at, so it's not really a disparity between the two. It just really depends on your current goals and where your business is at and where you want to go. Now, if you guys like this video, make sure of course to hit the thumbs up button right there and comment below any questions or any other thoughts you might have between the differences between a part-time and a full-time assistant. And if you still haven't yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button right there so you don't miss any of my videos every Sunday and Thursday on how to work from home and how to have a business from home, which you guys can check out those two playlists right here and the latest video right here. Hope you guys have an amazing day and remember that small steps matters, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!